Hello, Chris Jarvis at Acrylic Pixel here, and in today's video I'm going to give you probably my first official game devlog update. So I've been making my little indie game Focus Find for coming up to a year now. So I started in August of 2020, and I've had a bit of a rethink, a good rethink. So the first thing I'm going to talk to you about is how I redesigned all my levels. So I did about 20 levels for the video game and I got stuck creatively. I couldn't think of any more puzzles, I couldn't think of any more mazes, I couldn't think of any more visual designs, and they were kind of feeling sluggish and a bit clumsy. And I decided to have a bit of a rethink. And what I did was I came up with basically a metric for my game. So a metric is anything measurable which influences games design. And so I created a key. I created the size of my player character, and I created the size of the enemies, and I created what could be a length of a corridor and the length of a small space. So I had something that I could use to build the levels. Before I was using the circles in just putting them wherever I fancied, just to make pretty shapes, and I thought that that would make a good game. It does not, because the game is very heavily focused on where the camera is, where the player is, where the edges of the level fall off, so to influence exploring. And in the very early part of the game, I want that to be very subtle, and I don't want that to be a major part of the game's design as a puzzle element until later into the game. So I'm focusing on tight corridors, and previously up until this point I'd done practically no tight corridors, maybe the odd tight space to squeeze through just to shake things up a bit. But the very start of the video game, at least the first 20 levels, you're going to be able to see where you're going, and there's only going to be a few choices of where you can go, because the whole idea is that you're teaching the character the mechanics to set them up for later in the game for when things get a bit more difficult. So you can see the key that I've made, and that's helped me with all my other levels. And I went in and redesigned all the levels. I mentioned that I ran out of ideas creatively. So what I did was I had a bit of a rethink, and I looked at each level set in isolation. And so here you can see my level designs for Denial, and basically looking at a set number of shapes. I'm looking at how many levels I've got to do in that level set. So in this case there's 5, so it's one of the more difficult levels to do because I've got to think of 5 variations on a theme, and this theme is Denial. So what's happening in Denial is that the player space is very safe. The player is going along easy-ish maze, so it's usually just a path to follow, and in that space is going to be brightly lit and is going to be quite safe. And then outside of the walls, outside of the orange circles, there's going to be the enemies that are moving around and lurking, creating this idea that the player has made a safe space for themselves, and that they're in denial and they're living in that safe space in the denial, and outside is where the danger is and where ultimately the player has to face their demons, if you like. And so this method of looking in really small segments, looking at how many levels I need to create to fit that small level segment, using my key of measurements of the length of corridors and small spaces and the player and the enemy sizes, that's really allowed me to create these small levels, which are basically just teaching the mechanics and getting you used to the idea of what the game is going to be about. And hopefully over the last sort of 20 levels, the first few levels that I've done, that sort of sense is conveyed. So as I say, I've done about 20 levels so far, which is the first sort of theme of the video game. So all the 20 levels split up into maybe 3 or 4 or 5 level segments around their own specific themes. But these first 20 levels are under the main theme of Denial. And so Denial is the last level set, and so it's the last few levels of that section, if you like. And so that is how far I had got previously with the old method. And I've just coming up to the point where I've at least designed all of the denial levels, and I just need to finish off making and play testing the last few little levels in denial. Then it'll be moving on to the next level. So I just wanted to update everyone and let you know that it's very important to come up with a scale, a metric, a key for where your player can go and where they can't go, how big your player is, how big your enemies are, and the spaces that they can and can't go. It's a kind of a design principle, and I was just being kind of lazy, I think. And it cost me a lot of time, but it was an important process because I learned that what I was doing was wrong. And so I'm definitely not going to go down that way later on in the game where it gets a bit more important that is the case. There was nothing wrong specifically with the levels that I'd come up with. They did work as intended. It's just that they felt a bit more clumsy, a bit more loose, a bit more lack of attention to the actual design side of things. And they were much more conceptual, much more about trying to convey a concept. So it was a much more style over substance, if you like. And so that is a trap that everyone should avoid by making sure that they come up with a metric. So come up with a measurable way to measure gameplay design. So level design specifically, that's really important. So yeah, I'll probably give an update probably next month and let you guys know how I'm getting on. Like, comment, subscribe. Have you guys come up with your own methods, interesting ways of coming up with keys or metrics? Have you been stuck like I have creatively and had to rethink a way to kind of reinvigorate your design process? Then let me know, and it'd be great to start up a conversation about that. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.